I was not planning anything. I was not inventing Rogue Squadron on the assumption that somebody like Mike Stackpole could take it and run with it someday. This was 3 books. If we're lucky, they'll earn out and they'll make a little extra money from them later on. But no, I was not setting up anything in those days. It was mostly a Thrawn doesn't always win.
Authors also say things like that to make the world seem like a richer and fuller place.
Yeah. But no, there was no expectation. I might get back to that someday. I don't know. It'd be an interesting thing. But no, none of us were thinking. Lou Aronica was the only one who even had faith in this project. He was the one who got started. He was the one who said all along, this is a license for Bantam to print money. But no one else believed it. I mean, a hardcover price typically was low 20s at that time, 20 years ago. They sold Heir for 15. They cut the price really low, hoping people would buy it. Seriously, nobody, because the fans were quiet, because there was nothing for the fans to grab onto. It's a chicken-egg situation.
Yeah.
But nobody else really had expectations for the Thrawn trilogy or Star Wars in general. So yeah, the last thing we were doing was setting up future books. We're glad. It is amazing how many of my throwaway lines got picked up later on. It's kind of fun to see that. But no, I know it's hard to imagine at this point with Star Wars as big as it is. But I mean, even Lucas was. I don't know if he was convinced. He was talking about prequels at that point. But if the trilogy had died on the vine, who knows if he even would have bothered to do them. So, yeah.
Question for you. Have you enjoyed, now that it seems like a lot of the authors are going back and fleshing out some of the characters a little more, and I've noticed that you have a couple of books on Mara Jade that have come out. Is there plans to keep doing that, or is that just something that you wanted to do from before?
Part of it is I like the classic era. The Empire is big and strong, has cool Star Destroyers. You haven't got all the complication. You haven't got all the characters that 30 writers have now added into the mix. And I've done my fair share of that, so I'm not criticizing them. But it's a simpler era to deal with. It's in many ways a more fun era. You've got less history to go with, and you've got characters who are still around like Mara and Thrawn. I can do a younger Paleon, which is fun as well. There's just a feel of that era that I really like. So, and it's also less heavily trampled as part of the timeline. Fewer writers have done stuff in that era, so it's easier to write without stepping on somebody's toes. I mean, your approaches are either to watch your step carefully because a lot of other writers are going in that same area, find an area that hasn't been used very well, or go with the Wraith Squadron approach where you're kind of on the periphery and therefore you're not running into the major characters and worrying about conflicts and such.
Yeah.
So Disney had the same problem back in the 50s. They did a 3-part Davy Crockett thing on the Wide World of Disney that ended with him at the Alamo. And it was great response. People loved this. And they're saying, great, we just killed him off. So their solution was, we'll start a series back in time where he's still alive and kicking. And they did. So, I mean, now that certain of my characters have been offed, there's less incentive for me to write in those eras. So I'll go back to where I can deal with them.
Back to when it was fun.
Back to when it was fun. To a large extent, yeah.
I know we talked a lot about Mr. Zahn's favorite characters and stuff. I was wondering, like, Mr. Allston, like, what are your favorite characters that you enjoy writing about?
I've got a bunch of them. Han Solo is always fun to write because he's the creature of the id. He's not as irresponsible as he was made out to be, or as he makes himself out to be. But he's spontaneous. What he thinks tends to come out of his mouth, and that's always fun. I've had a lot of fun with Wedge Antilles for the simple reason that he's the sort of ethical raiser of the Star Wars universe. I mean, he is a soldier who does his duty, but he also wrangles every problem and tries to find the correct ethical solution of where he has any wiggle room. And so subjecting all those problems through his filter is a really, really fun exercise for me as a writer. Wes Jansen, of course, is on the Han Solo side of things, except he tends to be that irresponsible level that he pretends to be. He's a lunatic, and many of the wraiths are lots of fun. I've had a great deal of fun with Ben Skywalker. Evoking like a medium at a seance, my own experience as a 16-year-old, which was back when you carved novels out in stone in Acadian cuneiform.
Really? We have papyrus.
You did?
Yeah.
But if you read any of our characters and they seem to shine a little more, it's probable that we like them. A favorite child, well, you never admit it to the other children. But yeah, those four are among my favorites.
Yeah, just to back that up, after I turned in Heir to the Empire, my editor, Betsy Mitchell, called and asked, in the course of the conversation, she asked if I liked Han best. I said, I don't know why. She said, well, you gave him all the best lines. So yeah, if they sparkle and shine, yeah.
I'm curious about R2-D2, and it's always bugged me, especially watching the original trilogy, when Luke and R2 interact, and it seems like they have a second language where they understand each other, where he understands what R2 is saying to a certain extent. And none of the other characters really touch on that. Did you ever want to kind of have Han just say, how the hell do you know what he's saying?
Well, in some of the places, like on the X-Wing, you're getting a readout.
Mm-hmm.
So you can get the complicated stuff there. Some of it, I assume, is tone of voice, tone of, if R2 goes, he's not happy. I don't know. I tried doing something like that in the Hand of Thrawn duology, and they said he doesn't really understand. You're going to have to hook him up to a readout if you're going to have anything complex going by. But yeah, that's always been a little bit iffy.
Well, it works well in the movies because you can kind of see that. In a book, beep, boop, boop, okay, I understand that. Nah, that wouldn't quite work. So it's more of a visual thing.
Well, in a book, you can say that R2 trilled and establish it in the emotional context of the noise, and then the character's response will be in relation to that context, and that makes plenty of sense. It just depends on how you present it.
Yeah.
Could I just come with a comment to that? Because Anakin also understands R2, and both Anakin and Luke are very, very sensitive towards machines. Maybe something to do with that. They actually have some kind of understanding of machines.
We also have that Jedi cannot control machines or something. There's some
in some of the books like Karen Miller's Siege and Stealth. Anakin has a very, very good understanding of machines. I don't know. It's just my opinion.
There are some contradictions in the Star Wars universe. Don't be shocked. I'd established early on that Mara and the Emperor can hear each other across the Empire, and at one point, I think it was one of the short stories, Sue Rostoni had just come on board, I think, or at least had taken over a full-fledged operation. And I had a dialogue or conversation between the two of them, and she said, I can't do that because telepathy like that is not part of the Star Wars, the Force abilities. I said, well, you have Obi-Wan saying, run, Luke, and use the Force, Luke. The Force will be with you always. And she kind of hemmed and hawed and said, okay, well, you can do 2 or 3 words at a time. And of course, I came back being the person I am. Well, how about if I use 2 or 3 words at a time in several sequences? She didn't like that. And we've toned it down since then and made it something only Mara and the Emperor can do. But you've got these things where you've got apparently words going by, you've apparently got understanding of droids, and yet Obi-Wan can't manipulate machinery or he wouldn't have to go to the tractor beam thing. So you've got some questionable sorts of things. And don't even get us started in midichlorians. Okay, we got time for a couple more questions. Anybody who's not asked one yet who has a question?
You were talking earlier about how you get the you listen to the audio or whatever the movies to get the sort of the cadence and tone and stuff like that. How do you approach like writing dialogue for characters that weren't in the movies and stuff like that?
Well, sometimes we do the same thing with some of the characters that I write that are original characters, characters who were not presented in the movies. I will choose an actor or actress and utilize the cadence of that person's voice. Like I mentioned in a contest a year or so ago, the basis for my treatment of Admiral Dalla at the age she was in Fate of the Jedi was Lisa Edelstein from House, because there really was no really. Other authors treat her different ways, but that was who she was during the course of Outbreak. Outcast, and so we can do that with any character that we choose. It just we don't say this is based on so and so.
Until now.
Well, that's one character.
Yeah. Any of you ever remember the old Blake 7 show, BBC thing, many years ago? Anybody seen that? Raise hands. Okay. A couple. Anyway, just keying off of what Aaron just said, my model for Talon Card was Avon from that. So similar sort of thing. And when we don't have an actual actor or actress to base it on, we hear the voice in our head.
We do.
I know what Mara sounds like. I know what Thrawn sounds like, and I can just pitch the cadence and the words and everything. Once you understand how a character is what they're going to say or do in a situation, they're relatively easy to write.
It's something that comes with experience.
Yeah.
Last question.
Someone who hasn't asked one yet? All right, we'll do two. Okay.
This was touched on earlier, but I'd like a bit more into it. With your Fate of the Jedi, you're working with 2 other authors. You mentioned, so you sliced up the story and just started work on your individual pieces. But how do you make your stories coexist so flawlessly? I mean, that's
email.
Just
okay, what it is when the series has been sliced into pieces, 9 pieces for the last 2 series. Each of the writers goes home with the details that he's going to be working on, and outlines his first novel in the series. You know, with me it was book 1, with Christy it was book 2, and Troy book 3 of the latest series. We write the outlines, send them in to Del Rey and Lucas, who also sends them on to each of the other writers. So each of us knows what the other writer is doing. And then as the writing begins, you know, the writer of novel 1 starts, and then at a sequence, the writer of novel 2 starts, and so forth. We're in constant email communication. Even then, it's possible for errors to creep in and inconsistencies to creep in, and there you have Shelley Shapiro and other continuity people like Leland Shee from Lucasfilm in communication with us, saying there is a discrepancy here. We also in contact about things we would like set up for future novels, or ignored in future novels, so that we can take that handoff of the subplot whole, intact, and unchanged when it gets back to us. It's constant communication through email, but also exchange of our outlines, getting together at cons once or twice a year. We did that at San Diego Comic-Con a lot, and discussing things that need to be ironed out. It's communication, and we learned roughly how to do it in New Jedi Order. Got pretty good at it with Legacy of the Force, and it was really smooth by the time Fate of the Jedi came by.
And if it's a quick answer,
what are your favorite books, just that you've ever read?
way too many to list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Scores and dozens and hundreds.
Yeah, it's impossible for a reader to really pick out anything under 20 favorite books.
Pretty much. So that's not a short answer. Sorry.
Yeah. We are back here at 4:30 to talk about what we don't ever want to see in movies or books again. We may run out of that, so if you've got other questions, bring them along in an hour. Thank you all. Home, James?